Hello, friends. You're on a channel where we talk about things that determine our security, about hardware, ideas, and fates, behind which lie billions and the destinies of entire countries. If you, like me, are interested in getting to the very heart of the matter, in understanding why one technology wins while another, seemingly brilliant one, gathers dust on the scrap heap of history, you're in the right place. Be sure to subscribe to the channel, because today will be a deep dive into one of the most telling and even tragic stories of post-Soviet weaponry. A story that has it all: engineering genius, systemic failure, and crucial lessons for the future. And I'll be waiting for your comments. What do you think about this? Do you agree with the decisions that were made? Let's begin. And we're going to talk about a vehicle with the dry index BTR-90. And not just about it, but about how a single combat unit hits the ceiling of an entire era. How correct, even brilliant engineering logic ends up hostage to a system, to economics, to history. This is a story not so much about tanks and guns, but about us, about how we can or cannot make a choice at a fork in the road. So imagine the 90s. The country is in a deep crisis. The army, which not long ago was a red machine capable of eclipsing the sun with thousands of tanks, is now barely making ends meet. But the brains, the engineering schools, the design bureaus, they didn't go anywhere. In the city of Arzamas, at the famous machine-building plant, in these turbulent years, not just a new armored personnel carrier is born, but a whole manifesto. A manifesto titled, "We Can Do It a New Way." The development of the BTR-90 began in those very years when the country was trying to find its new face. And this vehicle was supposed to be Russia's first step towards creating its own armor, not inherited from the vast Soviet Union. Not another modernization of the old, but precisely a new word. From scratch, or almost from scratch. And you know what's most amazing? The designers said that word, loudly and confidently. Let's look at how the BTR-90 differed from its famous predecessor, the BTR-80, which to this day is the Army's workhorse. First and foremost, weight. 13 tons for the BTR-80 versus 22 tons for the new brainchild. Almost twice as heavy. This is not for nothing. This is the price. The price for life. For the life of the crew and the troops inside. Because 22 tons is not fat, it's armor. A one-piece, meaning welded from solid sheets, hull. A V-shaped bottom, which was supposed to divert mine explosion energy to the sides. Protection against large-caliber machine guns of 12.7 millimeters. The internal volume grew to 12 cubic meters. This is not just a number. This is space. The ability to breathe, not bumping your knees into your comrade's back, to place normal equipment. In a serious combat modular mount on top. In essence, the BTR-90 became a vehicle of the transitional generation. It seemed to stand with one foot in the past, in the Soviet philosophy, big, amphibious wheeled, to deliver infantry to the battlefield. With the other foot, it already stepped into the future, into the logic of platforms, where mass is a resource for protection, where the vehicle is a module carrier, where the crew is valued and protected. It was excessive for the old doctrine and almost ideal for the new one, which was just being formed. But let's digress for a historical note. Why did the Soviet school generally bet on light, amphibious, but poorly protected BTRs? It's all about doctrine, about nuclear war, about the idea of a total offensive through radioactive ruins of Europe. Their speed and mass were important, the ability to cross water obstacles without preparation. Protection from bullets and shrapnel was secondary. Infantry needed to be quickly delivered to the enemy's trenches, and there they would figure out themselves. This is the logic of the mid-20th century. But by the 90s, by the 2000s, everything had changed. The world faced local conflicts, partisan warfare, improvised explosive devices on the roads. And it turned out that the survivability of the vehicle and crew is the top priority. The West understood this earlier, starting to increase the mass of its wheeled vehicles. Look at the Finnish Patria MV, the German Boxer. These are no longer armored personnel carriers, but rather wheeled infantry fighting vehicles, weighing up to 30 tons. The BTR-90, with its 22 tons, was just catching this wave, trying to fit into the new global trend. But let's get back to our vehicle. A qualitative leap in a power plant. A turbo diesel 2V062S with 510 horsepower. This gave a specific power of about 23 horses per ton, a very good indicator, allowing this armored fortress to accelerate to 100 kilometers per hour on the highway. But the real revolution was hidden inside, in the transmission. For the first time on a domestic wheeled BTR, an automatic hydromechanical transmission with a hydrostatic drive appeared. It sounds complicated, but the essence is simple. This gave two fantastic capabilities that drivers of old BTRs dreamed of. First, turning on the spot. The vehicle could literally turn around on a dime. Second, moving in reverse at the same speed as forward. Imagine a combat situation. You rushed out, fired, and need to urgently retreat under fire. On old BTR, you would have to slowly, with difficulty, back up or turn around under fire, exposing your side. Here, you engage reverse gear and race away to cover at full speed. This is a huge tactical advantage. But, friends, every coin has a flip side, and here it showed itself in full. This complex, advanced transmission and highly tuned engine required a completely different attitude. They needed quality fuel, modern oils, a high level of technical maintenance, a culture of operation. And what was the reality in the line units of the Russian army in the early 2000s? After 10 years of total underfunding, brain drain, devastation in training centers, the reality was such that this machine turned out to be too smart for its environment. It was ahead of not only the hardware, but also the infrastructure and the very people who were supposed to fight on it. This was a systemic conflict. Let's move on. Onboard systems. For the first time on a domestic BTR, an information and control complex appeared. It monitored the operation of the engine and transmission, warned of malfunctions. Air conditioning appeared. For our country with its frosts and hot summers, this is not a luxury, but a matter of combat effectiveness. In a sealed can, heated by the sun and the work of electronics, without air conditioning, the crew would turn into boiled crayfish in half an hour. These solutions brought the vehicle up to modern ergonomic standards. But again, they made it more expensive, more complex. By the standards of the Russian army of that time, the BTR-90 was too comfortable. And now, the culmination, armament. And here we come to the most interesting and controversial point. The BTR-90 was originally conceived as a carrier for different combat modules. And the pinnacle of evolution was the BTR-90M variant with a Bakshiyu turret complex, borrowed from the BMP-3. Think about it. A wheeled armored personnel carrier was equipped with the same armament as one of the world's most powerful tracked infantry fighting vehicles. The complex included a 100mm gun launcher 2A70, capable of firing shells and guided missiles Bastion, 9kil 116-3, and a 30mm automatic cannon 2A42. This was a monster. Such armament allowed the BTR-90M to fight not only infantry and lightly armored targets, but also tanks at distances of up to 5.5 kilometers. It ceased to be just a taxi for infantry. It became an independent combat unit, a wheeled tank destroyer. And here the main conceptual contradiction arises, which I have long reflected upon. On the one hand, this is fantastic firepower. On the other hand, the very idea of a wheeled armored personnel carrier. Its advantages: speed, strategic mobility on roads, lower operating costs than tracked vehicles. Its disadvantages compared to a tracked BMP. Typically, less protection, although the 90 was good with that. And, more importantly, worse cross-country ability off-road, especially in mud and snow. By loading it with the armament of a heavy BMP, the designers created a hybrid, a machine that tries to combine the incompatible to be a fast transport and a powerful fire platform. But in real combat, it will be forced to either act as a BMP, and then its wheeled chassis may fail on difficult terrain, or act as a BTR, and then its most powerful gun will be redundant. This is a philosophical dead end. Or is it? Maybe this is the future? Let's look at Western contemporaries of that time. That same Finnish Patria MV, the German Boxer, the American Striker. According to the specification table I studied, The BTR-90 looked quite on par with them. Comparable mass from 16 to 36 tons for different Boxer variants, similar level of protection, powerful armament. You could even mount a 105mm gun on the Patria, but the key difference was not in the hardware. It was in the context. Western machines were created not as single items, but as elements of an integral ecosystem. Take the Boxer. Its key feature is modularity. The same armored hull chassis, and on top you can install different modules: combat, command, medical, engineering. The armor is also modular. It can be increased depending on the threat. All this was built into NATO's established logistics, training system, and long life cycle with upgrades. It was a systemic product for a systemic army. The BTR-90, however, was a single engineering breakthrough. A brilliant leap forward, but a leap of one plant, one design thought. They tried to integrate it into an army that structurally, economically, and organizationally still lived in the logic of the 80s of the last century, with its giant, inefficient fleets of homogeneous equipment, centralized but in flexible supply. It was a machine of the 21st century, but without the 21st century habitat. And so we come to the sad finale of this story. The vehicle successfully passed state tests in 2004. In 2008, it was formally adopted into service. It would seem, here it is success. But no, a serial order never followed. And in 2011, the Ministry of Defense officially crossed the BTR-90 off its procurement plans. Essentially, it buried the project. Why? The reasons were systemic, economic, and even political. First, money. It was the late 2000s. The large-scale rearmament of the Army started a bit later, was still ahead. The budget was limited, and the troops already had thousands, tens of thousands of BTR-80s. And an option for their deep modernization appeared, the BTR-82A, with new armament, improved engine, but on the old, proven, and cheap platform. From the point of view of immediate economic expediency, the choice was obvious. It's cheaper to upgrade the old than to master serial production of a fundamentally new, complex, and expensive product. It was a pragmatic but conservative choice in favor of here and now. Second, politics and strategy. It was at this time that the idea of creating unified universal platforms, Armada for heavy equipment and Boomerang for wheeled, was maturing in the country's leadership and the Ministry of Defense. A course was taken for a revolution, for a leap over a generation. The BTR-90, being a vehicle of a transitional generation, did not fit into this new concept. Why spend resources on a machine of the almost future when you can direct all efforts to creating a machine of the full future, the Boomerang? As a result, the BTR-90 turned out to be a superfluous link, too new and complex for the old Army, and already conceptually outdated for the Army of the future, which had only just begun to be designed. So, did the story end in failure? I believe not. This is a story with a bitter but priceless lesson. The BTR-90 became a victim of a systemic crisis, but it also clearly highlighted it. It showed that brilliant engineers alone are not enough. You need a ready environment, infrastructure, trained personnel, new logistics, a flexible procurement system, and most importantly, a clear understanding of what war we are creating equipment for. It was a beacon that pointed out all the problems of the post-Soviet military-industrial complex. The gap between development and operation, between the complexity of technology and the culture of its maintenance, between the ambitions of designers and budgetary realities. And what's the bottom line? The BTR-90 is a monument to a transitional era when Russia tried to find its way in the world of modern armor. It is an example of how you can create a technically advanced vehicle but lose on the field of systemic decisions. Its fate is a verdict not on the engineers from Arzamas, but on the system that failed to take advantage of their breakthrough. And perhaps its experience, its developments, the same engine protection ideas, were not in vain and were taken into account when creating new Russian vehicles. Friends, this story makes you think about a lot. About the price of progress. About the choice between a quick, cheap solution and a complex but promising one. About how important it is to create not just hardware, but entire ecosystems around it. I'm sure each of you, now has your own opinion. Write in the comments. What do you think? Was the decision to abandon the BTR-90 the right one? Or should it have been put into series at any cost, breaking the existing system for it? Can brilliant hardware alone change an army? Or does the army first have to change itself? Be sure to write, argue, share the link to this video. And of course, subscribe to the channel if you aren't already with us. Because such deep dives, where technology meets history and economics, will be coming up again. We have a lot to talk about. Thank you for staying with me until the end. See you next time on the air.